Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna and welcome to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Netta Goodman. Netta is the creator of Conscious Mama and she's also one of the first 15 belief coding facilitators in the world. After working in the healthcare for years as a deflated nurse and health visitor, she's finally found a modality that she describes as science as well as spirituality meshed together. With this healing modality, she's been able to quickly and effectively help people to health by removing their limiting beliefs, trapped emotions and trauma. She also enjoys working with mothers who may feel stuck and lost and helping them find themselves again through rediscovering their strength, balance and clarity as well as connection to intuition. She states her purpose in life is to ignite a desire in you to become curious about what else life has to offer, and she offers her wisdom in the service of love. I love Netta, I've known her a while and I can't wait for this episode. Hi Netta, it is great to get you on the show.
Hello, nice to be here with you.
I know, I think last time we had a chat similar to this, it was on your Supernova Live. It is Supernova Lives, isn't it?
Yeah, Supernova Live, yeah.
I can't remember how long ago that was now. It was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, good few months now, yes.
And I know we connected, it's got to be over a year ago. It's probably a year, 18 months ago now, through belief coding. We've spoken a little bit about on this podcast a few times actually, with us both sort of being training to be belief coding facilitators and stuff. But I know you've got a lot more experience than me in the belief coding space. And I know you know, I see a lot of the good stuff that you're doing on your Instagram, and you help a lot of mums. You've got your kind of mums networking group or community support group that I've seen as well, which you can tell us a bit more about. And so I know that you help mums in particular, but I know you won't rule out helping men as well, but mums that really just need some guidance and mentoring really. But I know that you also worked in the NHS, didn't you, for a while?
Yes, I did, and I call myself retired.
Which is interesting because, of course, I had my whole pharmaceutical background, and I was not the enemy to the NHS, but because I have a lot of good friends that say, that still work in the NHS that I supported and grew that relationship with. But I kind of understand. I suppose we have that understanding the pressures more than most of working for the NHS, and I think actually since you've left, it's actually got worse, hasn't it? I
haven't really kept in touch, so I don't know.
You got out and you were free.
I got out, yeah. But I mean, for me, working in healthcare, especially like Western medicine, that door is not completely closed. And I joke about it that I've retired, but I don't feel like I should just yet close that door completely. Firstly, because I worked so hard to get my degree and my master's as well, and to actually secure a position within the NHS. Because initially, when I qualified, I couldn't get a job in the NHS. I had to look private, which was great. But for me, it was like, no, I really want to. I want to go within the NHS. And so, and with most colleagues within the NHS, we always joke about it, that if you haven't been broken by the structure of the studies and what you have to go through to actually get to that position where you feel like, now I'm finally able to help people, then I don't know what happened, because it feels like everybody has got like a sad story along the way, how they struggled through and then they got into the job and were helping people.
What were you doing? What was your role in the NHS? What were you doing?
So I qualified first as a learning disability nurse, and I was working in a private sector lovely residential unit, which was like an in-between step up between from like I'm a bit stuck. Anyway, for males, all males. It's in between the ranks of almost like independent living and like a severe psychiatric like closure. So we were kind of like in between, where it would be a step down, but not quite completely independent living. Just lost for the word.
I know you mean,
yeah. So it was all males, and it was from 18 till plus end of life, and it was lots of different various disabilities, behavioral challenges, and and volatile situations at times. But I really liked it. I really, really enjoyed it. It taught me so much, and it was truly about grit. And anybody who has worked in nursing will know you would do shifts, and shifts are a killer, physically and mentally as well. So that was a really good period in my life, learning period in my life. And then I thought, because obviously within learning disabilities, say for example, if somebody is in their 60s and has lived quite a sheltered life, because if you think about 50 years ago, for example, learning disability was really, really big stigma. So parents would have been covering up or shielding their child from the public because of the stigma, because of pointing fingers and all sorts of things like that. So not all these people would have gotten the right help around their health, and often love is blind. And so let's just imagine that somebody who is in their 60s has really bad dental hygiene or dental problems. So they then therefore need, for example, textured diet to eliminate the possibility of choking, and they may need different dental, procedures. Now, for a person with learning disabilities, that involves a whole team of people to organize and desensitize and arrange. So I was just thinking, okay, so this is huge. Like, why don't we go right to the beginning now, and in this day and age, and work with families who have children with learning disabilities, and focus on those preventative measures that have been neglected 60 years ago. So that's how I ended up going into public health and health visiting. And my idea was that I was predominantly going to be working with families with learning disabilities. But that's not how the system works.
Yeah.
So I had these great ideas, and probably people were looking at me like, and then I really, really enjoyed health visiting, although it moved away from learning disabilities. I did have a few families who have had diagnosis of learning disabilities, so I did use those skills. But I did find myself in a really great role where I was kind of like jack of all trades and master of none, really, because when you come to somebody's house, you never know what they're going to be needing support with. And so really leaning onto those skills that I learned within learning disabilities, where you have to be person-centered and individualized, because one size doesn't fit all, came in handy for me, as well as like mental health and all my holistic interests and things like that. So
it's really like every day it was different as well.
Every day was different.
I think if you're working on a ward in a hospital, yes, you're going to get different characters, but you're more or less doing that same routine, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah. Whereas in health visiting, it could be different, yeah, totally. And I did enjoy it, but like I said, it didn't quite go to the plan, and it didn't quite allow me to be as free with the advice as I would have liked to be, because we have to follow NICE guidelines and evidence-based protocols. And if the NICE guidelines are not necessarily recommended or acknowledging that meditation is good for your health, then we can't really be, recommending it as such as NHS professionals. But obviously, like, it's not as rigid. Like, it's, if somebody is open to it and they would ask me, well, do you think if I tried meditation, would that maybe help with my anxiety, then of course the conversation is opened up, so that's fine.
Yeah. So I know obviously you left the NHS, and so we'll come to that in a moment of the reasons why. But before we do, I've jumped into this whole like, oh, you used to work for the NHS. But what a lot of the time on this podcast we talk about, because obviously it all came about with my story of going through domestic abuse, and just I think by sharing our stories, it can really help people and help the listeners, because we see so much, don't we, online of this perfect. I have this theory that a lot of people on Facebook are showing all the good side of their life, but actually they're miserable as hell deep down. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying a lot of people, because we're in this digital age where, you know, we show off our materialistic things, or just that we're, you know, really happy in our life, where actually it's been, you know, a tough couple of years. And I just think that's this is why I hate it with the boys, you know. I'm always like, because they're getting into that digital world, and they've got to like show the good all the time. But I know you are not originally from the UK, or your family aren't anyway, so I don't know exactly the whole story. So I'm like, just because I want to be nosy as well, I wanted you to like open up about if there was anything about your sort of story, because obviously you left the NHS, and I know the bit after, which we can come to in a moment. But was there anything that happened like in your life that you want to share that sort of brought you to the journey that you're doing today, as well as obviously working hard, doing your masters, and getting it, you know, wanting to help people, because that's ultimately what you were doing with the NHS. You wanted to help people, didn't you? And I think that's what you're doing now, since you've left the NHS, which is interesting. But I'm interested to know, where did it all start, and if there's anything you want to share, sort of like your story from before then.
Yeah, so originally I was born in Slovakia, which used to be Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And then obviously they split the country. And I come from the west, and which borders with Hungary. So because they moved the border in the past a lot, there's a lot of sort of Hungarian being spoken. So I speak both languages. And actually my auntie,
that's good.
And my auntie, she lives in Vienna, which is obviously like an hour away from where I was born. So we're quite sort of all around the place, my family. And where did it all start? So I always liked sort of working with children. So I mean, my mum sent me to a college with chemistry, so because she's like, oh well, you're good at chemistry, you go to college, learn chemistry. It was like so boring. But then afterwards, I did like a top up in childcare qualifications and just worked with children. And I think that's where like I sort of found my calling, I suppose, about helping others, because I felt like I was helping the parents and the children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got really bored. I get bored easily. And so when I was 18, I left Slovakia, and I left back then, many years ago, 24 years ago now, 25 years ago, you could leave as an au pair, because you needed a visa back then. It wasn't like free travel. So I got a visa to become an au pair, and I ended up going to Wales and worked in a really lovely, cute family with 2 little girls. And so I had a really good time for 2 years. That's when I learned to speak English, because I didn't know how to speak English when I came. I arrived on a bus, which took 24 hours to arrive from Slovakia with one suitcase. And I didn't know any English. And
because I've always thought your English you're really well spoken, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been one, because I've got sort of many people that I've met from sort of Eastern Europe and different places, and Lenka, who's a good friend of mine, who was my counsellor and stuff. I mean, she speaks pretty well as well, but I've always thought you could, I don't know if people may have like, not everybody would think that you were from Czech Republic or Hungary, wherever.
Yeah, Slovakia, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
I think maybe the fact that I've always remembered speaking 2 languages, so I don't ever remember just speaking one and then learning another language. So I always remember speaking 2 languages, kind of helps me pick up other languages as well.
yeah,
And it's really,
my sister's a
yeah,
language teacher. She said the more languages you do, it does get easier.
yeah, and also like with accents. So if I ended up in Scotland, I'd have a Scottish accent. Or even now, it depends who. If I go a little bit towards Liverpool, I'll pick up a twang. It just kind of sticks to me. I just hear it and I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, back then.
so you were doing that. You were with the family. You were saying you were with the family.
Yeah, I was with the family, and we back then we didn't have mobile phones. Well, I didn't have a mobile phone. Didn't know anyone who did have a mobile phone, just like landline. So I called my mum after a week of arriving that I've arrived. And after 2 years of being an au pair, I was just like, well, I'm not done yet. I don't want to go back to Slovakia because what am I going to do? So I applied to cruise ships, and it was so ad hoc, really, because you have. Well, back then I was like buying a Cosmopolitan, and at the back you have all these adverts, and there was an advert for how to get a job on cruise ships, and I was like, oh yeah. So you wrote into them, and they wrote you back. But what they did was they sent me like a printout of contacts for cruise ships, like nothing else. So I had these contacts that I was like, okay, so I need to learn how to write a CV and a cover letter. And I applied to 20 cruise ship companies to work with children in their children's entertaining department. Mm. And I had a reply back from 5. They were all no's, and 1, which was a yes for an interview. And that was P&O Cruises down in Southampton.
Yeah. I love this part of the story because I didn't know this. Yeah. This is what I love about this podcast. I find out all this stuff from people that I never would have found out.
Yeah, so I went for the interview. I haven't got a clue how I managed to get that job, because I just felt like everyone else was a lot more qualified or experienced than myself. But I did get the job, and a couple of weeks later I was packed up and walking up the gangway and joining the ship life.
Love it. I bet that was good fun though, wasn't it?
Oh my goodness, like I would so recommend it to anyone. Like I want my kids to do it, because this is actually backpacking in style.
Yeah.
And you're going around the world and you're safe and you're being paid, like you have no outgoings. And you party every night, you're seeing the world, and you're getting the true, university of life, like customer service training like none other.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life. Like that's where I learned everything about different cultures as well, because there was a huge difference in the Brits cruising, in the Americans cruising, or the Europeans cruising, what their requirements were and what their wishes and how they complain and how they're happy and all those things,
Yeah, and the tips probably as well.
Yeah. Well, we could just live off our tips back then.
Yeah, exactly. I know other people have been on cruise ships and had a similar kind of feedback about traveling the world, obviously not having any outgoings, sort of saving money while you're on there, really.
Yeah, you can do that too, which I didn't.
So how long did you do that for?
I did that for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So quite a long time. I got a little bit bored afterwards, because we were going to the same ports and just like, oh, what's next? And then I just was really bad at choosing a life partner, and I just kind of thought, well, I'll just settle down with somebody who was really interested in me. And that was my first husband. And so I got married, and then we settled down here in Chester, which is a lovely little city. And this is where I had my first 2 boys. But the marriage didn't last. Yeah.
And so then when did you kind of move from cruise ships and marriage into the NHS then? Where's that sort of bridge?
Yeah, so when I had my boys, I was sort of looking into something that would suit around the kids, obviously, because it seems to be always the mother that needs to think about these things. So I found myself a little job, a teaching assistant in a mainstream school for a little girl with Down syndrome. So I was already then tapping into learning disabilities. And I did that for 6 years. And then I sort of was teaching children, and I had a group towards the end of 6 years. I didn't just support one child, but I had like a little group of children with lots of different various conditions. And it was challenging because it's a different setup in a mainstream than in a special school. But I really loved it because I honestly felt like I could do the job with my eyes closed, because obviously I worked with children for years. I had my own children. I had this great intuition, and then throwing the learning disabilities in there, it was a bit of an unpredictability as well, which I loved. And you have to be really quick and creative to stop a behavior escalating. So I thought, oh, I've got this really, I've got a really good strength in this. So I was kind of in between, do I go and find a job in a special school? Or do I go and do something? So I just walked around Open Day University, and there it was, nursing and field learning disabilities.
Right.
Okay. I just thought that was the start of it for me. Then I thought, well, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting from my point of view, like hearing your sort of journey of how you got to where you got to, and I think you've got that real sort of passion. Is always a bit of a cheesy word, but there's no other word I can use right now. But you have got that passion with children, haven't you? And sort of like you say, like helping with the challenges. Whereas there's a lot of people that would run a mile with behaviour challenges,
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I had friends that would come and volunteer in the school, and they would see me with the children, and I could tell on their faces, and they would come up to me afterwards and be like, I don't know how you do it. And the thing is, it's just so funny, because if somebody had upset me, one of my colleagues had upset me, and I'd go to the deputy and I'd say, this is how it would work, and what you're asking me to do is really not going to be productive for anybody, and we're just going to end up back in this circle in a loop-to-loop way round. And they'd be like, we really can't do this without you, so yeah, we're going to go with what you're saying. So they didn't want me to be off sick with stress or depression or something,
You were the one that would do it. But you know what, it just shows like your skill set, and just also I'm trying to think of it's like a unique, you've got that compassion, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because a lot of people would sort of like jump straight in and be wanting to get to a solution quickly with somebody and not have the patience. Whereas probably that creative side of yours as well, where you see it as a challenge, but you've got that compassion and patience to be able to sort of deal with it, really.
And the intuition as well.
It's a unique skill, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, and that intuition as well, like, I can just feel that it's not okay for that little person. It's not okay. And I'm just like, back off, people. It's not okay. Like, because we often forget, like, we stand in this position of hierarchy and authority. And we often use this language and these,
it's all boundary stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and like we forget, like, no, because I said so, and excuse me, and all this talk they do in school, and it's just like, like, if we really want them to respect us and learn from us and look up to us and be inspired by us and follow what we're saying to them, then we mustn't be speaking to them like they're below us.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what tends to happen, you over there, and all of this, but then.
Whereas a lot of people don't agree with that. I totally get it, because I had a few challenges with my youngest, and I think he's going through a dyslexia thing, and he is completely different than my eldest. But we went through a period of time, and it was all emotion with everything that happened with his dad. But I was he was hitting me. I was the person that he took it all out on, if you know what I mean. And I remember finding it really challenging. Like, I was, I didn't know how, at one point in time, it wasn't for too long because I'm a proactive person. I was looking at ways that I could sort of connect with him really. But I did find it really challenging because because my eldest, you can have those boundaries. And really all it was like talking to him and making him understand that I really loved him when it came down to it. But I remember I found it difficult, because I was like, I didn't know what the answer was initially. But I was proactive. I did a lot of research online and kind of was determined that I was going to kind of get this. And it's great because we've got this really secure bond now, or really lovely bond. And even still now, when he, if he's angry about something, I can kind of break him down. Whereas there was a period of time where I just thought, I can't deal with this child,
Yeah.
I just don't know how to get him to understand me, sort of thing. Whereas you're just going to be able to adapt his style. But I think before him, I may have been like, oh, children just need boundaries.
Yeah.
And they do. They obviously, every child needs to know the boundary, but also it's about how, for me, what I learned, it's about how you communicate it, isn't it? And just, it's understanding. We all want love and we all want understanding as people, don't we? And so if a child is feeling completely misunderstood, then I think that's when problems arise. And when adults feel misunderstood, that's when problems arise, isn't it? But
yeah,
it was a big learning for me, because I remember one morning going into school and the headmaster had to take me into his office with an ice pack. He literally just punched me in the face, like by the eyebrow. It was just like, he was so an upset child. And he didn't want to go to school, and it was a fear that the reason why he didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to leave me, I hadn't grasped that at that stage, and I was just like, you just need to go into school. And it was just, I just remember it was one of my most embarrassing moments. Just as I got to the door, he just turned around and went, I ducked, and he hit my eyebrow. Next thing, came up like a big lump, and I'm in the head office with an ice pack. Like, my son had just punched me. I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was completely distraught,
Yeah.
So it's just, I think a lot of the time when people say, oh, these children are just not behaving properly, it's about not being so ignorant and diving into finding out why and understanding why,
And zooming out, what's happening in the environment and what's happening to them as well, because it's like they're mirroring something.
Exactly.
Something being reflected back to us that we're not seeing.
So I can imagine it's been really rewarding, your journey with helping.
And also with babies, when I was health visiting, if a parent would be concerned there was something wrong or whatever, or they've been investigating, I have a colleague, and we both do the same thing. We like to hold the baby, which during COVID was really difficult because you've got the plastic sheet on you and everything else, the whole PPE. It's really difficult, but I like to hold a baby and just have a little cuddle with the baby, and I can sense, I can feel like what it could be like. Something like an information will just drop in, and then we'll think, well, have we investigated this? Have we looked at that? Or even, how are you feeling, Mum? This is you. How was the birth? Is there something that you need to process? Something happened. But I also had childminders call me and say, oh, would you mind doing some observations, because I have concerns about this child. And an hour of observation, and then everything was fixed, because it was about the outlook of the childminder. So if we're thinking there is something wrong with the child, then we need to adapt. So we're often running towards, oh, we need a diagnosis. But we don't need a diagnosis, because everything's going to change, whether we have a label or we're not going to have a label. What we need to do is adapt the environment, adapt how we are around these needs that you're saying that are different to everyone else's. And once we zoomed out and looked at the environment, and we thought, right, well, if you think that there's something wrong, what can we do to make it easier for both of you? And once those things were put in place, there was no more question about diagnosis or anything else. It was just like, oh, that's just how we like to do it now. Exactly. It's so it fascinates me. I just think it's really interesting, and
you know, like I say, I think you've got this unique skill and passion around helping mums and, you know, children, which sort of brings me to what you're doing now. And I think I know why you left the NHS. I think it was the stress of the job, wasn't it? And just the system and the process and things like that.
It was the fact that I wanted to do more with the subconscious mind and do more around alternative healing therapies. So bridging the gap between the Western medicine and the Eastern or the traditional or the holistic. So we can't really necessarily call the Western medicines holistic modality or healing modality, because it's not looking at everything, you know, and I didn't feel like I was in a position of helping. And when I approached the big bosses, are we able to bring in belief coding and run a pilot or do a study with mums that are struggling with anxiety, but not high enough to be able to be referred to a secondary tier, and we are not necessarily helping them? Can we do belief coding? Can we do something? Is there something that we can do to help? Because I didn't feel like I was helping, just going in and listening to somebody, because sometimes that's all you need. But there's a cap to that. So we could go in 6 times, but then often what would happen is the first, second time I'd go in, things are improving. And then the third time we're even worse than when we started. And then what we do, you know, so obviously listening isn't everything. But the door was shut in front of me. They didn't want to hear anything about it. So I thought, well, when, if not now? When, if not now, I have the choice. You know, I can always come back to this and do this, but I can also do it much better if I go private and if I do this myself. So that's why I sort of went on to set up Conscious Mama and helping families, really, whether it's with the children, teenagers or mums, or in their relationships, whatever that may be. And at the moment, I'm offering free Zoom calls, free advice, because of the climate that we're in and everybody's struggling with money. And I think also we're so not used to it going to somebody and paying for what we need, because we're so used to getting it for free. We think it's free, you know, on the NHS, or going to it, oh, well, I'll just speak with my health visitor or speak with my doctor. Even though we don't value it often and we don't always get what we need and then we moan, we're still not used to going out and paying. So
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people will pay for a personal trainer. There's certain things that people will pay for, and
so like it's not it's not a problem. Like if you buy a £70 handbag or £150 for your hair, like it's not a problem. But the issue is that we know the value of those things and we trust it. So I know when I pay £150 for my hair, I know what I'm going to get. But I don't know what I'm going to get if I pay somebody for acupuncture or a shamanic breath work.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So there is no trust in that value. So that's why I decided to do it free, which is risky, because also when something is free, it loses its value. But I just thought I wanted to offer something in the community, in the community. So any topics can be discussed, anything. And then, also I do EFT tapping.
I think it's a good way for you to kind of meet people that could then use some of your services.
Then I can, that's it. So we can do advice, and then also, give sort of deeper advice, whether it be EFT, they're more drawn to. Is it belief coding, they're more drawn to. And also I have such a vast handbag, like with tools around me. Like I have so many people that specialize in lots of different things, that if there is something that I am not hot on or I don't know what to do with, I'll know a person.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really good. So for people who listen to this thinking this Netta sounds amazing, she's got loads of experience, I really want to learn more from her. Obviously you're doing the face-to-face stuff, aren't you? It's local to you in Chester, is it? Yeah. But so just maybe explain what that is, and then also how other people can, that might be in London that want to reach out to you.
Actually, predominantly my work is online, so everything can be arranged via Zoom, which again for mums is really easy, because often we have this idea that health visitors come into my house and they'll judge, and I have to make sure everything smells of bleach, you know, that it's clean and all this. When you go on Zoom, you don't have to do any of that, because you can just blur your background.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can do, you know, you can do a consultation or a session with me in your car, on the phone, or whatever. So it's really easy.
Yeah.
So it's predominantly on Zoom.
But the Chester thing you're doing, it's like, is it a morning, and what is it? I have seen things that have...
So every Thursday you can book in a Zoom call with me. And those are the free, those are the free sessions. Yeah. But I mean, if somebody local to me wanted to do an in-person session, I'm happy to, you know, go to certain...
I thought you were doing a little kind of coffee morning or something, or was that something you did as a one-off?
We were doing mother circles. We were doing mother circles, which was in person, and that was a lovely idea. So I do sister circles with my sisters. We sit every new moon. Not real sisters, like, in case somebody... It's a bit witchy. But
you've got 3,000 sisters.
This is another really, really good, and I don't know how well understood it is, another tradition that is coming back, where women sit together in circles and share without any judgment. And we go around the circle, and we have each month we have a different topic that we talk about, and it brings up lots of things, and it's really about how are you truly, and often we can cry or we can laugh and whatever, but we'll also journal, and it'll bring up this, you know, these emotions that we're so often on autopilot and don't think about. And so then when it comes to the forefront, it's so much easier then to get clarity and be like, oh, okay, right. So so many others as well that are saying the same thing. I'm not weird. There's nothing wrong with me. And you get that really good bond and connection with your community.
That's really good.
With like-minded souls.
So for people who are listening to this, who is the ideal person that you tend to work with?
Possibly mums that have had children and are feeling lost or stuck, because it's obviously that phase through motherhood. The child is born, but also a new person is born, a mother, and we can sort of find ourselves lost a little bit, like, where have I gone? Because I've prioritized everybody else in my life, and I have to make all these sacrifices, and I don't really feel comfortable around it, you know. So just really someone who is kind of struggling to make sense of it all. But also I do believe that, like, the first 40 years of your life, we're learning, and then past 40s, we're unlearning. So anybody who's really on that journey of unlearning and being like, well, what is the meaning of this?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of women do go through. I'm sure men do as well, you know.
And recently I've worked with teenagers as well, which is, I don't know, a new curveball from the universe. I've had quite a few teenagers come to me in the last few weeks, and we worked on social anxiety, which is huge with teenagers, screen addiction, feelings of not being loved, feelings of self-sabotage, negative talk, and all of these things, you know, with teenagers, huge. And I'm quite like drawn to that work as well, because imagine if we can help the little people at such an early age, what that difference it makes later on in life.
I think you know me, with the whole sort of teenage thing. I love helping like younger people with all this stuff that I'm learning and skills online. But I think their mindset is, because it's totally different now, the world that they're in, isn't it? You know, I was having a conversation with my son about depression, because he thought depression was just, you know, feeling a bit sad, because, you know, all the time on all these social platforms, people are, I'm depressed, aren't they? And he'd misunderstood what it was, and I think a lot of youngsters misunderstand what it is.
And then throw in, you know, all this new thing, well, whether it's new for me or it isn't really that new, but all this gender fluidity and you know, waking up one day and being a shoe, and another day I'm nothing, no identity, you know. And there are children, you know, really close in my proximity who have changed their names 3 times now, and then they're happy with that, but their immediate circle friends, they're confused. They're really confused. They don't know, well, if it is in, then should I be doing that? Well, I don't know if I like boys or if I like girls. Well, I just really don't want to go out anymore if I'm so confused. And it really can mess their heads up.
No. Yeah, I reckon we could talk on a whole nother podcast on the topic. But it's great. I think that's if you're doing that kind of stuff with teenagers, I think that's really, really valuable. Like, massive kudos to you, and commend you for doing all this good work. So to summarise, mums that are listening to this who are feeling a little bit lost, because we think when you do have children, we give so much to everybody else, don't we? And we kind of can lose ourselves in that process. And what's the best way to reach out to you, Netta? Like
Instagram or Facebook, Conscious Mama, Mr. Conscious Mama.
So we'll have, for those of you listening or watching us on YouTube, hello, you'll see in the comments section all of Netta's contact details and how to reach out to her. And if you're listening on Spotify or any of the podcast channels like iTunes, you'll see in the show notes as well all of Netta's details. But so if you're a mum and you're lost, if basically if you kind of, sometimes you just get like that intuition, like we were talking about, the gut instinct of like someone hearing this can really understand me. I definitely encourage you just to reach out to Netta directly and, you know, have a chat and see where it can take you, because sometimes it can be that the best move that you've made that can really kind of I love the sister circle stuff that you're doing, because I think all that kind of stuff is just, we're in such busy lives all the time. And we need to be able to sort of like offload in a room full of people that trust us, or an online Zoom meeting of everybody that trusts us, whatever it is. You know, I think it's important, as women and men need to do it as well, that we kind of talk about stuff, because life is so busy. And if we don't deal with it, it can manifest into physical disease if we keep dampening it down.
Absolutely.
So one other thing I wanted to ask you was, how do you help people then? Because I know you do the belief code, you have done belief coding, and I know you've got this whole holistic thing, you do tapping. So how, for people listening, I think it's important to explain, you know, how you can help people, or if someone's got a teenager that they want help with, you know.
So it depends really what it is that they need help with. It will be tailored to them, but I don't really consider myself, like, people in this kind of field will call themselves healers, and I wouldn't take on that hat. I would say everybody has the answer within them, and it's, I don't know if it's a bit of NLP maybe, you know, just reading between the lines. So I like to have a good conversation chat with the person who comes to me, and I'll read in between the lines and listen out for the words they repeat mostly, or what they say, the phrases, because there'll be hidden meanings behind that. Also, I will draw up like a timeline of events and illnesses or diseases manifesting, and then draw up any correlations in between those and the symptoms. And then look at metaphysical aspect as well, metaphysical aspect of healing, how stuck emotions in the body will, you know, manifest disease as well. So look at those links. And usually the person at this point will get an aha moment, and they'll be like, oh, I know what it is. I know where it happened, or what could have caused it. And even if we just think with our subconscious mind, like, oh, yes, I know what it is, it's different to that kind of inner knowing, because you get like an elevator going through you inside, don't you? Like, oh, gosh, I've got it. And if there isn't one of those moments when kind of the individual like zones out, you know, like, because they're all of a sudden thinking about it and they've got it, then we can do tapping to release these stuck emotions and realign the energies, rebalance. Usually things will come up. I will tap every day, if not every other day, and I'll still have emotions and tears come. like, because we're not aware of these things subconsciously.
Yeah.
And then also, like with belief coding, I'll be able to help people find the root cause of especially deep and reoccurring things that are, like, if you like, called discomfort. And that's the beauty of belief coding, actually, that you don't need to know the name of your discomfort. I've done a session where it would be like something like, I'm just so irritated, like I'm so irritated. What is it specifically? I'm just irritated. Or I don't even know what it's called. It's just like, oh, I just feel like, I don't know what it's called. And we can get to the bottom of it and turn it completely around.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love what you're doing. And I think, I just want to thank you for all the good stuff that you're doing to help other people. And I know, I can understand now from hearing that your whole journey, where it all comes from, and actually you've got so much experience to help mums especially. But as you say, you're not ruling out everyone, because we want to heal the world.
Like, I don't believe in coincidences. So somebody was to knock on my door and they were a man or a 60-year-old man, and they thought that, oh, I was led to you, then I don't believe in coincidences. I think that's meant to be. So that's why I wouldn't. Yeah, that's what I wouldn't rule out.
I'm the same. I think it just helps you with your focus of where when you think about the ideal person you can help with, and also when we focus, it's like that marketing thing as well. When we focus on everybody, our message gets weak, doesn't it? It's usually, I feel, it's usually someone like ourselves that we can help, that's maybe 4 or 5 years behind our journey. Because I help Met, even though I talk about the Amazon Queens and Etsy Queens, my new Amazon Queen program, I've got 2 guys in there because they feel aligned to that, and that's totally fine. But it just generally tends to be, women that I focus on just because of my journey. So yeah, and I think we're probably the same with that. So. And we've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to round things up. I know we could talk for another hour. So for people listening, do reach out to Netta if you just get that gut instinct and you feel like she could help you on your journey. So I know I always ask everybody, what does freedom mean to you? So what does freedom mean to you, Netta?
Freedom means choice, just in one word. Like, as long as we have choices and we believe that we have choices, then we have freedom. Yeah,
absolutely. Because there's a lot of time that people don't feel like they've got any choice at all.
Yeah, and you know what? Even things like, there could be like people who are like, oh, well, it's easy for you, or it's all right for her, and that kind of stuff, but I don't have money, I don't have money, so I can't do this, I can't do that. And especially with this climate as well, with the cost of living rising and all sorts, there's always a way. I remember making sacrifices when my kids were little, and I wasn't working, I didn't go back to work because I chose to stay home with them. And I went to car boot sales. Now we've got Facebook Marketplace, to buy used toys if we have to. There's always another way, there's always a choice.
There is always a choice. Yeah, I totally agree.
Everything, I think if you think about yourself right now, I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to become thrifty, then you have a choice. You're not just stuck, but oh, I've got money.
It's that whole priority thing, isn't it? Whether sometimes there's fear that stops people doing something in all shapes and forms, sometimes you're not ready, or you're just not. Some people are just not prepared to feel uncomfortable, because when you make a choice out of a change, you kind of growing, you have got to go through that uncomfortable phase, because some people just like, well, I may as well just stay as I am, because I know that I know it's my safe zone, isn't it? But yeah, I totally agree with you, because that's why I talk about, which we haven't on this podcast, love, money and mind, that has helped me with equilibrium. And the thing is, even though it's funny recently, because I've got teenagers now, well, Ruben's nearly a teenager, but yesterday I had all these girls and boys in my house. I secretly love it, because at least I can keep an eye on them, and I like to try and be the cool mum. And because I've renovated my garage, but there's nothing, I realised there's nothing in it. There's just like a punch bag in the corner and then like a football table. And I've been planning to get like a cinema TV and sofa and stuff. But for me, I don't know if it's a northern thing. I'm just ingrained in this, like, I've got to get my bargains. And I could easily go out and buy the TV and the sofa. But I know that if I get a brand new sofa, they're going to wreck it. They're going to spill something on it, and I'm going to be really annoyed if I spent an absolute fortune on it. And I was looking on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, I can get it cleaned. I won't be really distraught if, someone spills a drink on it or whatever. And I've been taking my time, but when they were all hanging around in my house this weekend, I thought, Anna, you just need to get a move on and just stop over-analysing these different things. So I love my bargains, because when my boys were little and I didn't have the funds, I did exactly the same as you, did things out in nature. I mean, I still love going out in nature now, but, I was more proactive, thinking of things that you can do that doesn't really cost you anything, which I think you can definitely do a lot more when they're little. When they get a bit more teenager age, they suddenly realise the value of stuff and they want all these things. But you can still do a lot in nature. So definitely think choice is a good one for freedom, because we've all got a choice and we can all make that step. Nearly everybody that I speak to has had to make a choice for freedom. And actually, when you get them freedom, it gives you all the choices to be able to do what you want to do. So it's crazy that in that word, you've got to choose something to get you freedom that is then going to give you all the choices you want, but you don't know until you've stepped into it. So a good answer for that question. It's been great to have you on the show. I love chatting to you. And for everybody listening, go and reach out to Netta.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you want to get more freedom in your life, then come and join Your Freedom Project Facebook group, which the link is below in the comments section. And I am giving you a copy of my visualization manifesting book. So manifest more freedom in your life and live the life of your dreams.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.